Closed session anyway. Okay. Are we on, Sarah? Yeah, I'm missing my yellow light up here, and I don't know whether that's... Am I? Yes, we are. We're hot. Okay, I'm going to call to order the October 20th, 2016 meeting of the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District. Board of Directors, Ms. Hunt, would you please call the roll?
Director Lavanino? Sierra? Here. Clark? Here. Bennett? Here. Lizalde?
Here.
Mosby? Here. Snyder? Patino? Here. Richardson?
That's why we waited, see?
Carbajal? Wolf? Here. Farr? Here. And Chair Adam.
Okay, would you please stand and pledge the allegiance to the flag? Okay, Mr. Dillon, would you read us out into closed session?
Mr. Sheriff, it's okay, the clerk will
Okay,
handle
all
the
right,
reading.
all right.
All right, we have two items for closed session. We have C1 is conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9A. This is Alberto Rodriguez and IL Highway Recycling, Inc., a California corporation versus Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District et al., Superior Court of California, County of Santa Barbara, case number 1487217. And item C2 is a public employee performance evaluation, Government Code Section 54957B1 for the Air Pollution Control Officer.
Okay, so how long do we expect this to take? Okay, all right. We'll reconvene then. Thank you. Okay, we're reconvening from closed session. Mr. Dillon, would you please report out for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board took no action in closed session that requires a report, but I would note for the record that the litigation that was filed against APCD regarding United Paving was dismissed without prejudice by plaintiffs, and so that case is essentially gone away. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, next item of business is approval of minutes of the August 25th, 16 meeting. Is there any discussion? Can I please get a motion? Okay, nope, you gotta have a roll call.
Director Sierra? Aye. Clark? Bennett?
Aye.
Lazalde?
Aye.
Mosby? Snyder?
Abstain, I was absent.
Patino? Aye. Richardson? Wolf? Farr? Chair Adam?
Aye. Okay, next item is the approval of the administrative items. Does any member wish to pull any of these items? Hearing none, can I get a motion?
So moved.
To approve the administrative agenda? Ms. Hunt?
Director Sierra? Aye. Clark? Aye. Bennett?
Aye.
Lazalde?
Aye.
Mosby? Sierra? Or sorry, Snyder?
Aye.
Patino? Aye. Richardson? Wolf? Farr? Chair Adam?
Aye. All right, next we have public comment.
Chair Adam, I do have one speaker slip for Dr. Inga Cox.
Okay.
On October the 5th, many residents addressed the APCD hearing board regarding the variance from district rule Benaco was requesting. It is stated in the variance order that the petitioner has been aware of the development plans since there was a monitoring station for hydrogen sulfide near Elwood School, which no longer is there because of development. Variance states there is no expected excess emissions with variance. Is the Venoco EOF currently shut down with no movement of gas or crude?
Or are they currently pumping gas to the platforms? On October 9 and 10, many neighborhoods in the western part of Goleta called 911, the fire department, the gas company, because of an odor that made people sick, headaches, respiratory problems. The area affected were El Encanto Heights, the Hideaway, the Bluffs, Winchester Commons, Coronado Drive. Some had to leave their house. It appears that the source was hydrogen sulfide from a site in Elwood Canyon that was drilling a water well, and they hit a hydrogen sulfide pocket. The public needs to be notified once the whole investigation is over to what really happened. Hydrogen sulfide is a lethal gas above 1,000 parts per million, according to OSHA. Sour crudes that come into the EOF from Holly, as I recall, have a hydrogen sulfide level above 10,000 parts per million. Number 11 in the October 5th variance order reads in part, there is not a likely immediate threat or hazard to public health and safety. If we are dealing with hydrogen sulfide at those levels, in my opinion, this is not the case. Please, the temporary monitoring station for hydrogen sulfide is imperative to avoid a repetition of the confusion surrounding the source of the recent event. The petitioner was allowed already 1 year without any temporary monitoring station for hydrogen sulfide. The EPCD does not give a deadline by when this station has to be installed. The only thing the petitioner needs to do is report increments of progress. Hasn't he already had 8 years to find a place? I petitioned the board to have a notification of the neighbors that could be affected prior to any well drilling. The radius appears to be very large in this instance, since it crossed the 101 freeway. People need to be informed about hydrogen sulfide. If the official press releases state that hydrogen sulfide do not state that hydrogen sulfide could be lethal, which is what OSHA states, then the public will presume that they are just dealing with an odor. Also remember that hydrogen sulfide causes olfactory fatigue at 100 parts per million, according to Ellen Horn's toxicology textbook. You develop loss of smell in 3 to 15 minutes. I also petitioned the board that the APCD always has a hydrogen sulfide analyzer on hand for emergencies. Please, the health and safety of Western Goleta has to take priority. If one is informed, there is also
Yeah,
less
I'm
chance
sorry,
for
your
panic.
time's up. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Ms. Arlen Janae, would you please give us your report?
Sure, thank you. I have 4 items I'd like to report on today. The first one, I'd like to introduce 2 new staff who recently joined the Air District. Anthony Luong has joined the Engineering Division. Anthony, if you could please stand up, that would be great. He joined the Engineering Division on August 1st. He will be working on the district's permit compliance and source testing related work. Anthony is from Hawaii. He graduated with the Bachelor's of Science degree in Environmental Engineering from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Go Mustangs. All right. Next up, Alex Economou. He joined the Technology, Environment, and Assessment Division on October 10th. So, going on 2 weeks, right? Yeah. He will be working on the division's emissions inventory. Alex is originally from Western Spring, Illinois. He graduated from University of Oregon in 2015 with degrees in environmental studies and business administration. Go Ducks. After graduating, he moved to San Luis Obispo. He worked as an AmeriCorps member, part of the Civic Spark program. I actually was very fortunate to be able to work with Alex for a short window when I was at San Luis Obispo Air Pollution Control District. So I'm very happy to have both Anthony and Alex join our team here. So thank you. All right, next I wanted just to bring to your attention, we issued a press release earlier this week for teacher grants application for environmental projects. Their applications are due on November 18th. So if you have any teachers in the area, K through 12, who are interested in securing the 2016-2017 Care for Our Air teacher grant, it's a $300 mini grant. Please encourage them to get their applications in by the 18th of November. The third item relates to the federal 8-hour ozone standard. On October 3rd, the California Air Resources Board submitted their official recommendation for area designation for the new standard of 0.070 parts per million. It's based on recommendations of monitoring data over a 3-year window, 2013, 14, and 15. For the state of California, there are 19 areas in the state that ARB recommends be designated as non-attainment, and 14 areas they are recommending as attainment. There's also 6 areas that are unclassified based on lack of monitoring data. Santa Barbara County is one of the 14 areas that is being recommended as attainment for the new federal standard. So this puts us one step closer to become formally designated attainment for that federal 8-hour standard, which will actually take place a year from now. They have until October 2017 to make that formal action. Okay, and then the next item is a longer item. I wanted to provide some background on what Dr. Cox was just referring to with the H2S odor incident in the Goleta area. So I wanted to start off with some chronological listing of exactly what happened and how we responded, talk about the fence line monitoring network that's in place, APCD's role, and then the next steps. So on Sunday, October 9th, it was in the early morning when the Elwood area of Goleta was impacted by a rotten egg smell in their neighborhoods. Between early morning 5:36 to 9:06 on Sunday, the Veneco Elwood oil-filled fence line monitor recorded readings above the alarm threshold. APCD compliance staff later in that afternoon actually had a conversation from a staff member with the Office of Emergency Management regarding the alarm values. We received 13 complaints that day, and that was Sunday. Sunday evening into Monday morning, the fence line monitors once again were recording levels above the alarm threshold. Monday morning at 10 a.m., there was an interagency conference call that occurred between County Fire, that's my oops from San Luis Obispo County, Public Health, Office of Emergency Management and the Air District to discuss this event. Between 10:30 and 1:30, between 10:30 in the morning and 1:30 in the afternoon, APCD staff and OEM, along with County Fire, conducted inspections at an agricultural water well drilling site and also Veneco EOF. We issued a joint agency news release to inform the public of the investigation that was underway related to the release of hydrogen sulfide in the Goleta area. On that day, we received 16 complaints. Let's see, at approximately 2:30 p.m. Monday, Environmental Health Services suspended the well drilling permit. The stop work order was in place or is in place until a mitigation plan has been developed and approved for them to go forward, if they elect to develop a mitigation plan. APCD will continue working with environmental health if and when the mitigation plan is submitted for review and approval to ensure that air quality impacts are minimized and monitored. During the evening, Monday evening, and then early into Tuesday morning hours, the Veneco fence line monitoring readings once again had levels above the alarm threshold. Even though the water well had stopped, it still took some time for that H2S to dissipate from the environment. On Tuesday, October 11th, let me push a pause button here for a second. APCD, you heard from Dr. Cox that we have a portable H2S monitor, and we do. It just happened to be on Monday, October 10th. It was at the lab for its annual calibration. So it wasn't close, it wasn't accessible. We did have the opportunity, I knew that San Luis Obispo had a similar piece of equipment, so I called up to San Luis, and it took a while, but eventually I tracked down my former boss. They have Columbus Day off. We were very fortunate that Larry Allen made it into the office, and Sage, our inspector, were able to go up and get the Jerome handheld device on Monday afternoon and bring it down and start working on it in the field Monday afternoon. But Tuesday's when we actually had the best opportunity to get out with our Jerome H2S portable monitor and put it to work. During that time, measurements were taken throughout the region, up at the agricultural water well drill site, at the property entrance, Veneco's EOF facility, and then in 4 neighborhoods in Goleta. All the sampling did not detect H2S. And this piece of equipment, this Arizona Instrument Jerome H2S analyzer, has the ability to detect levels as low as 0.003 ppm to 10 ppm. On Tuesday, 4 complaints were received by the APCD. Based on wind conditions, review of Veneco's operations, the fact that the facility itself is closed, not processing any product due to the pipeline 901 not being functional, input from the on-site water drill operator, and the interagency group discussions, it was concluded that the agricultural water well drilling activity was the source of H2S, and Veneco Elwood onshore facility was not the source of the odors. And with that conclusion, County issued a news release stating the source of H2S. So to give you a little bit of background on the fence line monitoring, they have 6 fence line H2S monitors that are strategically located throughout the facility based on the potential sources of H2S released at the facility. What's great for us in this instance is those monitors are in place, and they're a huge benefit even if the source is coming elsewhere, not from the Veneco facility. So it was a benefit that was provided from a source outside of Veneco's actual operations. The alarm threshold for these monitors is 0.3 parts per million H2S. On the morning of Sunday, October 9th, the fence line recorded levels above the alarm threshold, and the maximum readings that were recorded between October 9th and the 11th was 3.8 ppm. APCD posted on our website the fence line monitoring data for the times when the readings exceeded the alarm threshold. So we were able to put that information up on our website by Tuesday morning. We were also able to put a map up to indicate exactly where those 6 fence line monitors are, just so the public was better informed of the exact levels and where they were being recorded at. The levels of H2S measured at the fence line range from generating a note or odor to generating some temporary health benefits. And we did hear from the public via the complaint process of nauseous, headaches, minor respiratory symptoms, and eyes watering. So early Tuesday morning, October 11th, readings have remained below the alarm threshold since that time. We have not had other readings above the threshold. There were just 2 instances, one when there was a power surge, and then there was also a planned calibration in this last week that occurred, but not related to actual levels of H2S. As far as the Air District's role, our primary role is to assist with the investigation to determine the source of H2S and relay relevant information to our sister agencies and the general public, and also to respond to public complaints. As I mentioned with the mitigation plan, we will be assisting environmental health if mitigation measures are identified to ensure that the air pollution impacts are minimized when and if agricultural water well drilling actually resumes. We continue to evaluate our legal jurisdiction. However, typically water wells for agricultural activity are outside of the Air District's regulatory authority, and many of our regulations do not apply. As far as next steps from an interagency coordination, I think that most agencies involved would agree we got a little bit of room for improvement on this one, and something that we'll be discussing soon. On November 10th, Office of Emergency Management will be leading an after-action review meeting for the Elwood H2S incident. During this meeting, we will review the incident, what went right, and what needs to be improved. And that concludes my report.
Supervisor Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that detailed chronology. Our APCO, I think that was really important to have that out on the record, because there were a lot of things happening, a lot of information out there, and I think chronology is always really important. I just had a couple of questions. First of all, is the monitor that our APCD has, but that was kind of in the shop being calibrated, is that now back in service again?
Yes, we were holding on to San Luis's monitor until we got it. We received it this week, and we were able to give theirs back.
Okay, great. And then, so when the Veneco fence line monitors go off, does that automatically go to anybody other than Veneco?
It goes directly to the Air Pollution Control District.
So you get that, and
Yes.
somebody is monitoring that in your shop?
Yes.
And even on a weekend? How does that
It comes
work?
into the Air District, and then it's circulated to the relevant individuals who need to have that information to conduct their job, whether it's on the air monitoring side or on the compliance side. We do not, we have office hours of 8 to 5, and that's one of our largest challenges when we have incidents like this that occur off hours. The inspector who was in contact with OEM staff when the call came in, he then went to look online at the data to see if there were any notifications that came through the facility.
Okay. So I guess you'll be talking about this at the OEM meeting in November, but I guess in this case, I think that fire was also, and I see Officer Zamboni here, and Rob Lewin from OEM, and I don't know if we're planning to come and speak or not, but because I know that fire was called out. So if the monitors go off and you hear about it, then do you automatically contact fire and the other county departments, or does fire automatically contact you if it's this kind of an incident?
This is an area that needs to be modified. This is one of the procedures that I'm going to recommend is modified. Currently, the monitoring data comes directly to the APCD, but it is relevant in responding to emergency response, and we necessarily don't need to be the funnel for this information. The monitoring station network was established as part of the abatement order, and Mr. Dillon could probably explain more of what happened when this requirement was included into a permit. But it's something that's specific to an APCD permit requirement, not to say that it can't be shared with others. And rather than having any information ever funneled from one agency to another agency, I think it would be much cleaner if the information went directly to the critical responding agencies that need to serve the public.
And so what would it take to have that the fence line monitoring not only go automatically to APCD, but go automatically to OEM or fire?
That's something that I plan to talk to them further about. It would be a conversation between us, the other agencies, and also Veneco.
Okay. And then you're going to be talking about the loop back of public information, because obviously there were a lot of people that were very concerned and upset, and they're calling, you know, various agencies wanting to know what's going on and how dangerous is it. And so as a part of your future discussion, I know there's been some talk about, is there going to be a Nixle notification like there would be for a fire, or how is the public going to know about what's going on and have accurate information as quickly as possible?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we'll be talking more about as far as how we can ensure once we receive notification of higher levels of H2S, excuse me, how then do we relay that information as expeditiously to the public?
Okay, because I mean, I think that that's really, really important. And then my last question, Mr. Chair, and thank you, is Dr. Cox talked about the hearing board extending the waiver for Veneco. And of course, when all of this happened, everybody automatically assumed it was coming from Veneco. Nobody really thought it was coming from a well drilling operation. But what is happening about having the Veneco air monitor that was in place that now has been taken down because of some new construction? What is the process going forward in order to replace that someplace else?
So in the hearing board action, they included a permanent station, you know, giving an extension for that, but also immediately beginning seeking a temporary monitoring location. And the proposed fire station in the city of Goleta that's under development now is one site location that would be ideal for this. I've been in conversations with Mr. Bennett on our board, as well as Michelle, the city manager, to try to figure out how we can move forward in establishing a air monitoring H2S station on that property.
Okay, great. Well, you might also loop in the fire chief.
I've talked to Chief Peterson as well, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, and I would just say that the odds of this happening again in the same area is pretty low. I mean, you probably have, you know, given that the county is the geographical size that it is, you have a better chance of something happening elsewhere that won't be detected by the Goleta Fire Station. And so, you know, I think what we should be talking more about is getting everybody the information, so when somebody calls in to 911, that they vector the information everywhere possible at that point, instead of trying to have the information go to one agency or another and have a chain of custody of the information. You know, it'd be just better, because a lot of people called in, I guess, and it would have been better had OEM been notified, had APCD been notified, had fire been notified by 9/11, instead of trying to have it go someplace like APCD, and then it's up to you whether it goes out to different agencies, and off hours is a problem, and all that. So, you know, I think, and given the fact that it could occur in Cuyama, Santa Maria, Guadalupe, Buellton, somewhere else, I mean, we're really, this whole discussion has been really geographically focused, and there's probability that this isn't going to be, you know, we're kind of fighting the last war.
Well,
And
Mr. Chair, if I could just kind of put this into context. When I first moved to Santa Barbara County 40 years ago, I moved into Winchester Canyon, one of the neighborhoods that was affected by this latest incident. And at that time, the neighbors in that little neighborhood went to the Board of Supervisors to complain about the rotten egg smell that was coming from what is now the Veneco plant. So the people that live in this part of Goleta for a long, long time have been, you know, concerned about the Veneco plant, concerned about releases, which is why those sirens are posted around there, and they check them, you know, once or twice a year. And I know the city of Goleta is, you know, much more familiar with all of that. But I just wanted to mention that because for people that have lived in this area a long time, this is not a new issue, and so the fact that they would be so concerned about it and the fact that they would automatically assume that it was Veneco is because there's a long history, of this kind of, H2S odor periodically, wafting over every place. And so, it's not a one-time thing, and I agree with you. I think the fact that it was a well drilling operation is probably, not going to happen again. And I think that obviously Environmental Health Services is now more attuned to the likelihood, and maybe they'll be looking at that when they review well drilling permits. But the issue of the public's concern about, what can and has emanated from the processing plant there has a very, very long history. And so that's why everybody, as soon as they smelled it, was like, they were really, really scared.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, two things before I go to Mr. Bennett. One is it's a water well as opposed to an oil well drilling operation, because we just keep referring to it as well drilling, but it was a water well. And second thing is we're talking about reorganizing how information goes out countywide for any type of an incident. And I understand that there's a focus here because of the repeated nature of this problem. But we're talking about policies for countywide, so I think that's important to remember that it's not just this problem in this area. Mr. Bennett.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on the city of Goleta. The city of Goleta was not notified by anybody, and this thing started with a call to the fire department around 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning. So even though the complaints began later than that, there was a county agency that was notified. And the problem that sprung from all this is that all of the oil agencies, and I'll talk about Veneco for now, have a means of reporting when something occurs at their plant or at their facilities. And they have a list of numbers to call, and and in this case, because the EOF is within the city of Goleta, Goleta's listed right after 911 is to be called immediately. The problem, and I don't know this for a fact yet, it's still being looked at, and I'm sure county staff will get to the bottom of it as well, as our city staff will. I do not yet know, but I'm kind of being led to believe, Veneco knew it wasn't them. They didn't do it. Their alarms were going off from an external source, and they were not the ones creating it. As we all know, they've been shut in for more than a year since last May, since the pipeline broke over a year ago. So all the product that was at the facility has all been removed. We authorized that to be trucked out of there. So there is no product left at that facility. And that we had knowledge of. But as this thing moved along, it really was through the efforts, as I've been able to determine, that it was the fire department, through their scouting out, as they learned that it wasn't Veneco, that this was coming from somewhere else, that they finally were able to determine that the problem was coming from the drilling of the well. And the thing I find interesting is, and I would respectfully disagree to some degree with my colleague to my left, the issue of H2S in that area is longstanding. There's no question about it. But in another life, when I used to work for the fire department, we determined 25, 30 years ago that when Veneco was constantly being blamed when we get calls and they didn't do it, we finally determined that the farming operation that is down to the west of Cathedral Oaks and north of Cali Real, given the different atmospheric conditions that can occur, we would get the smell of rotten eggs, of the H2S. And that's because that water, which is in the western subbasin in Goleta Valley, is brackish and full of H2S. It has a high content of H2S. And so that happens when at that time, when that particular farmer was watering the row crops and whatever else that was being grown down in that very low place. And the H2S hangs around for a long time. And the final solution that was discussed, and it was his solution at the time, and I don't believe it's owned by the same people today, was to go ahead and put the water on the crops in the afternoon because of the prevailing westerly winds would stir up the H2S. So I'm just bringing this to your attention for background because when this is all being discussed, there are people around that know a lot about it and have been involved in this thing as an issue going way, way back. And I want to thank the fire department for doing their scrutiny, because without it, I'm not sure. And the other is that environmental health, under the health department, issues the permit for all water wells, whether it be for agriculture or domestic purposes. That's part of their responsibility. Yet, in all the conversations, it's everybody comes back to the fire department, APCD, OEM. Well, the folks that are responsible for all that, I don't know if they're in the audience, I don't know who that would be, but no one seems to be discussing that fact. They're the ones that issued the permit. They're the ones that pulled the permit to shut the operation down. And it just seems to me there's a loose hole there, and this is something that will happen again if there's another well drilled, and it doesn't need to be the depth that this particular well, that I don't believe will be shown to have anything to do with the fact that H2S was exposed to the community. Because we've had the problem in the past for wells that farmers certainly didn't drill that deep to get the agricultural water they needed to grow their crops. So it has the potential to be ongoing in that area, and I would agree with that. And it's because the water is what it is, and we need to be able to make that all work. And the city of Goleta is committed to the fire station site, which we own, and putting a temporary facility there for the monitor. And also, ultimately, as the fire station goes forward in its design, we're committed to working with the fire department on seeing how we can permanently make that a part of the building. So I just want to give you that background. Don't want to be too wordy.
Supervisor Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, you know, I'm not privy to the information, I don't think any of us up here are, I don't know, maybe someone is, about the permit that was provided by Environmental Health. And it could be that the permit was executed properly, and perhaps there is a violation of the permit. So we don't know that. I did want to talk a little bit about the Nixle alerts, because I get them, and I get them, Mr. Adam, throughout the county whenever there's, Santa Barbara County OEM sends them through, whenever there's something throughout the county. So I get an alert even if it's in the North County. The first alert that I had on this, it did come through, but I didn't, the first alert, and I was going through here, was on Tuesday, October 11th at 7:22 a.m. And then again that evening at 7:24 p.m. And it was actually the last alert was when the alert noted that the source was agricultural in nature. So so there was a lot going on that particular day. I would, in your meetings and talking about this, Aaron, I don't know what the status was. I think there is some concern about notifying the public, and obviously it happened before this date that I'm referring to right now, that there was some breakdown, it sounds like, in notifying the public of what was going on, who was investigating, who was in charge. And I'm going to assume that there wasn't a public health hazard. There would have been evacuations. Mm-hmm. So I didn't see any of that. But I think in your meetings, I think this is a really good thing. Always after action reports are important, and I think there probably is a lot of lessons to be learned from this incident. And so I think I'm really glad that you brought this to our attention. Thanks to OEM and Fire for being here, and anyone else, the public, who has been interested in this. And I think all of us, when it comes to the safety of our, this is just like one of the worst things. I think it's something that we always worry about, and the communication has to be top notch, and communication to the public. Mm-hmm. And there was just a little bit of a missing link right here.
Yeah, so our meeting will be on the 10th of November. Environmental Health will be there, as well as the City of Goleta. and OEM, County Fire, and the APCD. Those are the specific agencies that I'm aware of. Rob, I don't know if I'm missing out on anyone. Okay.
Okay. We seem to have exhausted the director's report.
Okay, that won't be a new bar, don't worry.
I hope so. Just one particularly high one. So that brings us to discussion item 1. Sarah, you want to read that in, please?
Item number 1 is to receive and file a presentation on the 2015 Annual Ambient Air Quality Report for Santa Barbara County.
I have just a brief introduction before I hand it over. Each year, we compile an annual air quality report once the data from the prior year has been certified. And this information, this report is posted to the APCD's website. Today, we have 2 members of our monitoring and IT staff who are responsible for compiling and reporting this data. Joel Cordis, Information Technology and Monitoring Supervisor in the Administration Division, will be providing the presentation. Also here today is Sam Mickey, who joined the district in June of 2013 as an air monitoring specialist. He is responsible for the operation of air monitoring station, data collection, and program quality assurance. He recently had the opportunity to attend the 2016 EPA National Air Monitoring Conference in St. Louis, where he gave a presentation titled Using Instrument Metadata for Automated Troubleshooting. I'll now hand it over to Joel. He does have 19 slides, but rest assured, he has a lot of trend
Growl.
graphs and a lot of maps. It will go quickly, and you'll find it very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Adam, members of the board. So as she said, my name is Joel Cordis. I'm the IT and air monitoring supervisor. So the district has a robust network of 18 air monitoring stations. The locations of these are chosen to meet the EPA's network requirements. Every year, the district summarizes the air quality data in an annual report, which is posted to our website. This year, we are presenting this report to your board and providing this presentation to summarize the air quality in 2015. We will provide summaries by pollutant and show some trends from over the years. And finally, we'll end with a little discussion about the air quality index. This presentation will focus on 6 main primary pollutants: ozone, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, and particulate matter, both the coarse PM10 and the fine PM2.5. These pollutants are measured at different stations throughout the county, but they're not all monitored at every station. Both EPA and California Air Resources Board have established health-based standards for each of these pollutants. These standards are based on different averaging intervals: 1 hour, 8 hour, 24-hour, annual. The standards are set at levels which would be considered unhealthy air based on scientific studies. So one note is at the end of 2015, the federal 8-hour standard was lowered from 75 parts per billion to 70 parts per billion, and so we chose to list that in that chart. So in 2015, we met the federal standards for all pollutants. We also met the California state standards for everything except ozone and PM10. We exceeded the state 8-hour ozone standard on 2 days and the state PM 24-hour standard on 15 days. We also exceeded the state annual standard for PM10. Although we did not exceed the federal 8-hour ozone standard of 75 parts per billion in 2015, there was one day which would have exceeded the new standard of 70 parts per billion had it been in effect all year.
Supervisor Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the PM10, was there any correlation of those 15 days from when we had fires?
Chair Adam, Supervisor Wolf, my recollection is in 2015 those were not associated with fire.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll start with ozone. We measured it at 12 sites in the county. So this map shows the maximum 8-hour averages of the ozone recorded at each of the stations. Los Flores Canyon recorded the highest at 71 parts per billion, and Santa Maria recorded the lowest at 55 parts per billion. The rest of the site maximums were all in the 60 to 70 parts per billion range. So the 2 days that we exceeded the state 8-hour standard were both at Los Flores Canyon with readings of 71 parts per billion. So since we have 35 years of data, we decided to show the trend of the past years to compare with 2015 data. So the blue line shows the second maximum 1-hour average ozone for each year to compare with the retired federal 1-hour standard of 125. The red line shows the fourth highest 8-hour average each year to compare with the new federal 8-hour standard of 70 parts per billion. So both of these trends show improvement over the years, and although we meet the federal 8-hour standard, you can see that we're kind of right at the line, and so it's hoping to continue to go down with the trend. So nitrogen dioxide is measured at 11 sites. This map shows the maximum 1-hour averages for each of these sites. Santa Maria had the highest reading of 46 parts per billion, followed by Santa Barbara. So this would be expected since both these are in cities with high traffic, automobile traffic. The nitrogen dioxide trend, we plotted the 98th percentile of the 1-hour average for each year, as shown in the blue line, to compare with the federal 1-hour standard of 100 parts per billion. The red line shows the site with the highest annual average each year compared with the federal annual standard of 53 parts per billion. So both of these trends show improvement over the years, and that we are far below the standard for these. Carbon monoxide is monitored at 6 sites. So in this map, we show the maximum 1-hour readings at each site in the county. Santa Maria had the highest 2.9 ppm, while Santa Barbara was the second highest with 2.1. And again, this would be expected since both of these are in cities with high automobile traffic. So the carbon monoxide trends also show that we are below the standards and have improved over the past 35 years. The blue lines show the second maximum 1-hour value compared to the federal standard of 35 parts per million, and the red line shows the second maximum 8-hour value to compare with the federal standards of 9 parts per million. So moving on to sulfur dioxide, it was measured at 6 sites, and so in this map we're showing the highest hourly average at each site in the county. Los Flores Canyon had the highest reading of 25 parts per billion, while the remaining sites were in the 1 to 3 parts per billion range.
I have a question.
Supervisor Wolf.
So I don't know if you can answer this question, but you mentioned the cities of Santa Maria and Santa Barbara a couple of times, and you said because of the car traffic. But I'm wondering if you can explain why there is such the high numbers at Los Flores Canyon for this sulfur dioxide and the ozone. What's happening over there?
Well, as far as the sulfur dioxide, I was going to explain that on the next slide, but there was some equipment breakdown at the facility there, the Exxon facility, which resulted in some readings at the site just north of the facility. And so that's where they came up for this, for at that site. As far as the ozone, it is a kind of sited downwind of major precursors. The nitrogen dioxide, the reactive organic compounds, they all travel downwind, and the high value ends up typically being down in a urban area because there's less chance of titration with the ozone and with the nitrogen dioxide. And so all the chemicals react with sunlight and end up being higher downwind. At the Exxon facility, it is a little more elevated site, which has typically been one of our higher ozone sites in the county.
So if you're looking at downwind, wouldn't you also expect issues at El Capitan, which is downwind of Los Flores?
Yes, El Capitan is at sea level versus the Los Flores Canyon site is at, I think it's like 800 or 900 feet elevation. So that makes a difference. The one on the site ends up getting more coastal influence and dispersion. It's not as hot, so it doesn't get as high of ozone levels.
Okay, thank you.
And is it possible that there's some kind of thermocline that stuff gets trapped in?
Yes, the ozone gets trapped in due to the inversion layers, so that would affect the higher elevations versus the lower elevations.
Okay, thanks.
So as you've noticed on the trend that you were just asking about, the sulfur dioxide trends show the highest 99th percentile. It's shown in blue compared with the federal 1-hour standard of 75 parts per billion, while the red line shows the second maximum 24-hour average to compare with the 24-hour standard of 40 parts per billion. So these trends both show that we're below the standard, and they show that after years of improvement, we had a couple of high years, which were due to some equipment breakdown at the facility there at Exxon. So PM10 is measured at 7 sites in the county. The maximum 24-hour average are shown. El Capitan had the highest reading of 134 micrograms per cubic meter, followed by Santa Maria with 66 micrograms per cubic meter. So, as I said earlier, we exceeded the state 24-hour standard on 15 days. Santa Maria had the most of those with 10 days over the standard. El Capitan and Vandenberg Air Force Base both had 3 days, and Lompoc had 1 day over the standard. The state annual arithmetic mean standard is also exceeded at 5 sites: Santa Maria, El Capitan, Vandenberg Air Force Base, Santa Barbara, and Lompoc. So the monitoring for PM10 began in 1986, so we don't have quite as many years for comparison. Also, we only collected data once every 6 days from 1986 to 2005. After 2005, we began sampling with an automated method and collected data every day. So the blue line shows the second maximum 24-hour average for each year to compare with both the federal 24-hour standard of 150 and the state 24-hour standard of 50 micrograms per cubic meter. This shows that we're below the federal standard, but we do not meet the state standard. This plot also shows more variability in the maximum concentrations each year. The red line shows the highest annual average each year to compare with the state annual average of 20 micrograms per cubic meter. And so this one shows that we still do not meet the standard but are improving. PM 2.5 is measured at 4 sites. Goleta, the highest in the county with 23 micrograms per cubic meter. But as you notice, all the sites are within 5 micrograms per cubic meter of each other. PM 2.5 is our newest parameter, which we began monitoring in 1999. The blue line shows the 98th percentile of the 24-hour averages to compare with the federal 24-hour standard of 35 micrograms per cubic meter. The red line shows the highest annual average each year. We are below both of these standards, although the highest 24-hour average shows more variability each year. The annual averages show a general improving trend. So finally, each pollutant has different concentration levels which are considered unhealthy. To help the public better understand the level of concern for each pollutant, EPA devised a scale called the Air Quality Index, or AQI, which normalizes all of the different concentrations to a single scale. On this scale, an index of 0 to 50 is considered good and has a color of green. 50 to 100 is moderate and has a color code of yellow, and 100 to 150 is unhealthy for sensitive groups, which has a color code of orange. Over 150, there is considered unhealthy with different various levels, but it starts with a color of red. We update the AQI on our website every hour to help the people of Santa Barbara County keep informed about the air. This pie chart shows the breakdown of the AQI for 2015. We had 249 days considered good. We had 115 days where we had at least one pollutant in the county in the moderate range. And we had one day that was in the unhealthy for sensitive groups category. So the goal here would be to get that pie chart to be all green. So this concludes my presentation of the 2015 Annual Air Quality Report, and I will take questions if you have any.
Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On your last, the pie chart, the air quality index, how does a day get pigeonholed in one of those colors? I mean, does one station have to be bad, or a grouping of stations, or how's that work?
Yes, so this would be a grouping for the county as a whole. So any one pollutant at one site would be the highest index value would be the reported for the county. So that a moderate day may be at a Lompoc, but the whole county would be considered moderate type of thing.
That concludes staff's presentation, unless you have questions.
Supervisor Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On table 2 of the staff report, there's, unless I'm just reading this wrong, it looks like there's more monitoring stations. I mean, even the Veneco stations that were referenced earlier today. It just seems like there's more on that list than are noted in your map.
Yes, so my presentation was focusing on the 6 primary pollutants. In the report, there are some stations for H2S that are doing fence line monitoring, and there's a couple of sites that measure meteorological conditions that are used for tracking where pollutants are going. And so those I did not carry over in the presentation.
Is it just because they're not significant?
No, just that I was more focusing on the 6 primary pollutants.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations for any additional stations? We used to have a public speaker who would come periodically and speak about the need for an additional station around Lompoc. But I'm wondering, in your professional opinion, do you see a need for any other stations in the county?
So, as I mentioned, we have a pretty robust network of stations. It's actually considered large compared to a lot of other districts in the state, and it meets and exceeds EPA's recommendations for what is needed to be monitored. We do have more monitoring due to the topography of certain areas to really characterize the pollution in the county. But every year we do an annual network review, and as we look at it, I think we are adequately covered.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Can I get a motion to receive and file? We have
So
a
moved.
motion. Did somebody second that? Second. And a second. Ms. Hunt, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Director Sierra? Aye. Clark? Bennett? Aye. Lizalde?
Aye.
Mosby? Aye. Snyder?
Aye.
Patino?
Aye.
Richardson? Aye. Wolf? Farr? Chair Adam?
Aye. Thank you very much, Mr. Cordes. Okay, that brings us to discussion item 2.
All right,
Very
item
good.
number 2 is a hearing to consider recommendations as follows. A, hold a public hearing to receive testimony on the 2016 ozone plan and the addendum to the final environmental impact report for the 2010 Clean Air Plan. And B, approve a resolution which will result in the following actions. Find that prior to approving the 2016 ozone plan, board members have reviewed and considered the addendum to the final environmental impact report for the 2010 Clean Air Plan with the final environmental impact report for the 2010 Clean Air Plan. Adopt the California Environmental Quality Act findings. Adopt the 2016 ozone plan. Commit the board to adopting the proposed regulations in the 2016 ozone plan. In the event the district's designation for state ozone standard is changed to non-attainment transitional, commit the district to reviewing the 2016 ozone plan and determining whether the control measures scheduled for adoption or implementation within the next 3 years are needed. And finally, authorize the control officer to transmit the 2016 ozone plan to the California Air Resources Board and do all other acts necessary and proper to obtain approval for the 2016 ozone plan.
Okay, first off, I'd like to acknowledge staff who have been working together to develop the triennial update of the ozone plan from the Air District's Technology Environmental Assessment Division. You have Ben Ellenberger, Division Manager. You have Molly Pearson, Planning and Grants Supervisor. Tim Mitro, our air quality engineer who works on the rule development in the rules section of this plan. He actually is not able to be here today. He got called on jury duty. We've been working with SBCAG staff on the development of the transportation measure section as well, and would like to recognize Peter Emhoff and Andrew Orfilia, who are both here today during your meeting. And with no further ado, I'll hand it over to Molly Pearson, who will provide a 10-slide presentation.
I like it.
Good afternoon, Chair Adam and members of the board. I'm pleased to speak with you today about the 2016 ozone plan. My name is Molly Pearson. I am the Planning and Grants Supervisor in the Technology and Environmental Assessment Division. Here's what I'll be going over. The California Clean Air Act, our process with the Community Advisory Council and the public, what's in the 2016 ozone plan, and staff recommendations. Apologies. Here's what I'll go over. The California Clean Air Act, our process with the Community Advisory Council and the public, what's in the 2016 plan, and staff recommendations for this meeting. The California Clean Air Act was passed by the legislature in 1988. It establishes air quality standards for pollutants at levels considered safe to protect public health. Our district was classified as non-attainment for ozone, a pollutant that can cause numerous respiratory symptoms in people, aggravate asthma conditions, and damage lung tissue. Ozone can be especially damaging to developing lungs, with effects lasting into adulthood. The Act required us to build a plan to achieve healthy air in an expeditious manner, with consideration of a wide variety of measures and an eye to the feasibility and cost-effectiveness of those measures. The first plan was adopted in 1991, and we've done 3-year updates since then, and this will be the 8th such update. The objectives for the triennial updates are to assess the effectiveness of our program and to include strategies for further reductions until such time as the standard is attained. So we started working on the plan update in the fall of 2015, and we held 3 Community Advisory Council meetings prior to bringing it to your board today. At the first 2 meetings, we presented draft elements of the plan, had some discussion, we received comments before, during, and after the meetings, and we made numerous revisions to the draft plan during the process. We brought a final draft to the Community Advisory Council in August. More minor revisions were requested, and the CAC made a recommendation to your board to adopt the plan. And at that point, we issued a public notice and made the draft available to the public for comment, review and comment from September 4th to October 3rd. And since then, we have not received any comments on the plan during the review period and since. So, what is in the plan? Well, Chapter 1 provides an introduction to the State Clean Air Act and the planning requirements, as well as our attainment status for both state and federal ozone standards. It was mentioned earlier in today's meeting that we do anticipate meeting that new 2015 federal air quality standard for ozone. The plan also includes chapters on air quality, emission inventory, stationary source control measures, transportation control measures, and some appendices, and now I'm going to go through some of the information in those chapters. Chapter 2 provides information on trends in air quality and population exposure over time. There are a number of charts showing downward trends in ozone levels at the monitoring stations with the highest readings. Some of these charts show that we already meet the 1-hour standard. However, to be considered attainment of the state standard, we must also meet that 8-hour standard. So this chart shows the number of 1-hour exceedances in blue, exceedance days in blue, and the number of 8-hour exceedance days in red since 1990. So you can see since 2010, over on the right-hand side, we've had very few 1-hour exceedance days and never more than 10 8-hour exceedance days in those years since 2010. The yellow line indicates Santa Barbara County population, which increased from approximately 370,000 in 1990 to 440,000 in 2015. So this chart demonstrates that as population has continued to grow in our county, we've managed to improve our air quality through programs implemented at the federal, state, and local levels. Chapter 3 provides the emission inventory for the ozone precursor pollutants, reactive organic compounds, or ROC, and oxides of nitrogen, or NOx. Ozone is not emitted directly. It's formed by a series of complex chemical reactions that involve these precursor pollutants and the presence of heat and sunlight. So every year we work with our regulated sources and with the Air Resources Board, and we compile an inventory of all these pollutant emissions. And for planning purposes, we also predict what those emissions will be into the future, accounting for growth in population, growth in commercial activities, and also the anticipated reductions due to existing regulatory requirements. So these graphs show how we think the inventory will change over time. From our base year of 2012, indicated by the black dotted line, to our forecast years of 2025 and 2035 and some of the years in between. So the ROC and NOx inventory profiles are very different, as you can see, and you might also notice the scale is a little different for each of those graphs. You'll also notice that stationary sources are the dark blue at the bottom, and they're just one part of the picture. Also, you might notice that the marine shipping contribution, which is in light blue towards the top of those graphs, in particular on the NOx side on the right, is quite significant. So each time we update the plan, we take a fresh look at the inventory, at the reductions we think we can get from the measures we consider feasible, and we develop an expeditious schedule for adopting those measures. We also identify measures that we'll need to study further to assess whether they will be effective and feasible for our air district. The plan includes 6 stationary source control measures recommended for adoption. All these measures have been included in previous plans. 3 of them are measures that require current achievable low NOx combustion technology in 3 different unit size categories, ranging from small commercial units to very large industrial boilers and process heaters. Our approach is to require technology only for new equipment. The NOx measures do not require retrofits of existing equipment. The other 3 measures are aimed at reducing ROC emissions from a variety of commercial sources that use solvents for cleaning or other purposes. The district will implement these measures over the course of the next 3 years, and each of them will go through our established process for rule development or revisions.
Each measure will be publicly workshopped and will be reviewed by the Community Advisory Council prior to being proposed for adoption by your board. We don't recommend any change to the transportation control measures in the plan, and we continue to pursue reductions in the marine shipping category, as you're all aware. So one important issue that's discussed in Chapter 2 of the plan is the possibility that district might be designated as non-attainment transitional. This designation occurs when there are 3 or few exceedance days during a year. So 2015 was a very clean year, as you saw from Mr. Cortez's presentation also. We only had 2 ozone exceedance days in 2015. However, that official designation change really won't happen until the state certifies all our 2015 data and also looks at 2016 readings to make sure that that downward trend is continuing. We expect the official change wouldn't happen until early 2017, and there still could be exceedance days in 2016 that could affect that outcome. If we see some 2016 readings, if we get more than 3 exceedance days at any one location, then that shift from non-attainment to non-attainment transitional won't happen. You're probably wondering what happens to our planning mandate if we shift into non-attainment transitional. The California Health and Safety Code requires us to take another look at our schedule for adopting measures that's laid out in the plan and determine whether our proposed measures are still necessary to achieve attainment. If we do go to non-attainment transitional, we will evaluate the measures and the implementation schedule and propose an approach to ensure that we achieve and maintain attainment of the state ozone standard. This process will involve our Community Advisory Council and board consideration. So, the 2016 ozone plan was developed with extensive input from your advisory council and provides for continued clean air for Santa Barbara County. We recommend the following actions today. Adopt the resolution included as attachment 1 to your board letter, which includes the following actions. Consider the CEQA addendum with the 2010 Clean Air Plan EIR. Adopt the CEQA findings. Adopt the 2016 ozone plan. Commit to implementing the proposed control measures. And as I just explained, commit to the district reviewing that plan and implementation schedule should the district's designation change to non-attainment transitional. Finally, authorize the Air Pollution Control Officer to transmit the plan to the Air Resources Board. Thanks, got through that without any questions. Wow. Any questions now?
Maximum efficiency, Director Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I probably should have asked this question during the last session, but what's the rationale for selection of a station location? For example, in Carpinteria, it looks like it's a good place to capture air, but it's not anywhere near where people live or generally hang out.
That's a good question, and I'm not sure who we want to take that.
Joel, I think Joel would be the best suited to respond with all of his experience in locating monitoring stations. There is a set list of criteria that's provided to us by both the state and EPA.
I think Director Clark would like to have one in his backyard.
So to answer that question, the Carpinteria station was actually cited as part of a regional ozone network when back in the 80s when all the oil and gas activities were working on getting their permits. There was a number of stations that were put in to capture the highest emissions. The Carpinteria Paradise Road was one of those. Carpinteria, so it's not in the city, it's actually inland because it was modeled to actually be higher ozone concentrations. It was also put at that location to try and determine if there was any transport coming from our neighbors down south into our county. Right. Yes, and so right offshore in Carpinteria, and then if there's emissions coming from L.A., Ventura that are drifting up this way, that site would hopefully we'd be able to determine where it was coming from.
Okay, Supervisor Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry it took so long.
It didn't take long. Can you go back to your slide, the one with the graphs, with that one right there?
Mission inventory.
So on the one on the left side, it looks like in out years, the stationary source, the very top blue, is going to increase. And I suspect that's why in your next slide, slide 8, you talk about stationary source control measures. And then it says all these measures have been included in previous plans. So my question is, since it appears as if it's planned to increase, is there anything else that we should be looking at for stationary sources in addition to what has been recommended?
So you're specifically referring to the ROC category or the
Yeah,
NOx?
the ROC and stationary sources.
That's a good question. We do have detailed, Chair Adam and Board Member Wolf, we have more detailed information on, what sort of sources are going up or down. Some of the increases are actually occurring at locations that are beyond our control. Even though it's identified as stationary sources, a lot of it's solvent use, and it's growing because the population's growing. So there's certain assumptions that we use. So as far as a control measure, I think that we would address, I'm not sure that we would get at those reductions. Director?
And we believe with the measures that are proposed in the implementation schedule as we move forward, that will reduce the overall ozone in our region to be below or maintain attainment with the standard. Right now, we're flirting with that attainment line, and we're going to have to go through the evaluation to determine if we need more reductions or not, based on what we already have in our implementation schedule. And we believe what we've presented here today will be necessary to reach attainment with that, and we'll have some assurance as we move forward. This update's something that we do on a 3-year basis. It's something that we're always monitoring and measuring, the ambient air quality as well as the emissions inventory, and then can further refine that if it's necessary.
Okay, well, so just to be clear, so what I'm hearing is that we're seeing it go up, the ROC, but there is not, and it's mainly because of population, even though it's stationary sources, and there's really nothing we can do. I just want to make sure I heard that right, because if there is something I'd like to know if there's really nothing we can do.
So several of that increase is related to increased usage of solvents and coatings, people painting houses, cleaning material, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We are proposing several ROC control measures that get at solvent usage in the plan. So basically, what we're proposing are the technologically feasible and economic measures.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bennett. Yeah.
I hate to sound so ignorant here, but on my color rendition, the blues look awfully similar to the description of marine shipping and stationary sources. So I want to make sure we're talking apples with apples and oranges with oranges. So I'm interpreting on my color chart here that the very top blue is marine shipping, which shows an increase in ROC, a drop-off on NOx. And then the bottom, which is the stationary sources, I'm presuming, on the ROC just has the very slightest increase, and on the NOx looks stable. So have I interpreted that correctly?
If Chair Adam and Board Member Bennett, that's correct. The ones on the bottom, the darker blue on the bottom is stationary sources. The ones on the top, the lighter blue.
So what Mr. Bennett just said, because the blues are so similar in here, so I take back what I said then, because then it's not stationary sources that are increasing, it's the vessel. It's the shipping vessel that looks like it's increasing. So thank you for having better vision than I do.
Well, I want to thank the staff for color, because it's something that
Yeah,
was a year ago, but I appreciate the color. Maybe next time, maybe a little different color.
But I think it goes to the point, and you know, because this has been such a big issue, is the marine shipping. And we saw earlier how we have had such a good, really positive reduction in marine shipping. And so I'm going to now change my attitude and be much more positive and anticipate that marine shipping line is going to go down in the future. Would you say that is an accurate, positive assumption? I mean, even though your chart is going up, I would like to think that with all the work that we're doing, it's going to go down.
Yeah, Chair Adam and Board Member Wolf, you can see there's a dramatic drop in NOx emissions
Yes, I
in the
see
marine
that.
shipping category. A little bit of an increase in ROCs. It's basically growth in the industry, assumed growth in fuel usage. So that's less of a concern for the ozone situation. We're more focused on NOx reductions from shipping. So we may see a little increase in ROCs from shipping, but we don't anticipate that to be a problem for our ozone attainment status.
Good. I'm feeling much better. Thank you.
Thank
you, Mr. Bennett.
All right. Do we have any public comment?
I have 2 speaker slips. We have Lee Moldaver, followed by Ben Oakley.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Air Pollution Control District. I'm Lee Moldaver from the Community Advisory Committee. I'd like to combine my comments for both for Section A and Section B. I think you can see just from the presentations today, both visual and oral, the thoroughness that your staff and your new director have moved us toward coming up with a really good ozone plan. I think you've noticed from the previous presentation by Mr. Cordes about the progress that we've made with your encouragement and your staff's hard work towards getting into a cleaner category. There was overwhelming support from the Community Advisory Committee to your board for adoption, both of the environmental analysis and of the ozone, the new clean air plan itself. And so I would strongly urge you to consider adopting both of them, Section A and Section B, at today's meeting. I don't think there's any organized opposition at all. And this level of progress would not be possible without the increased level of trust between businesses who are regulated under the stationary sources and your district staff. Because I'm sure you noticed that there haven't been any letters from regulated industry either. Those of you who have been in public service for a while know that this is a tremendous sign of trust and progress between the regulated community, the environmental community, and your professional staff. And I think a lot of the credit goes to you for raising that bar and encouraging this to happen. So I would encourage you to adopt the environmental findings, to adopt the new ozone clean air plan, and to adopt the recommendation for revisit if we do get improved air status to the transitional. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oakley.
Hi, my name is Ben Oakley. I work for ERG Operating Company. We're a local oil and gas producer in the Santa Maria area. And I've also been a member of the Community Advisory Council now for 5 years, and just would echo what Mr. Moldaver said, that this is a tremendous job that the APCD has done, along with the county, to improve emissions here in the county. And I thought this chart was special enough to print it out myself and bring it. And what you're seeing is the ability to achieve emission reductions despite the pressure of increased population growth. So I think it's remarkable what's been achieved here in the county through through both, and I quote, voluntary and regulatory means. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the voluntary means that my company has undertaken to help achieve some of these emission reductions. For one, we partnered with a Santa Maria ag producer to remove over 22 tons per year of ozone precursors by replacing 30 diesel engines at water well pumps with electric motors. And this project was funded through the purchase of emission reduction credits. So it's a good example of partnerships, to achieve emission reductions and also project objectives of companies such as mine. Another example is replacing 14 natural gas-fired engines at our oil wells to remove 7 tons of largely NOx, some ROC, and then also removing numerous well cellars from our active operations to remove 7 tons of ROC. Not to mention some of the cutting-edge technologies that we install at the facility, such as rupture discs with acoustic leak sensors on some of our equipment. So these are all voluntary measures. I'm not trying to take credit for the overall, reduction in emissions in the county, but it certainly is one piece of that very large pie. And through projects like these, and under the watchful eye of the APCD, we actually achieve more emission reductions than we have emission increases. And that's through the NSR rule that was approved. So I think that these are just some examples of many voluntary and mandatory emission reduction programs currently implemented by the APCD through the ozone plan and the rules. And I'd like again to commend Santa Barbara County and the APCD of this remarkable achievement and encourage the adoption of the 2016 ozone plan. Thank you.
Well, I just want to tell you, Mr. Oakley, if you don't take credit for the things that you didn't do, you'll never make a politician.
That doesn't happen to be a goal of mine, but thank you.
Okay. Well, you're right on track. Can we bring back slide 6? I just don't want to miss an opportunity to be obnoxious. I think what we could do here is cite the fact that as we get more people, we have less pollution. So maybe we should really spur and encourage development so that we end up with more people, and then pollution will disappear. Supervisor Wolf.
I know he's pushing buttons. But, this.
Hey, I admitted it at the beginning.
One thing that I think you can't overlook is that there is a place for regulation and there's a place for enforcement. And, certainly, as we get our notices of violation every time we have a meeting, there is no shortage of violations and enforcement actions against a variety of industries. So I do think that the Air Pollution Control District is keeping, there's a violation from ERG Resources in here. There's many from Greco Oil and Gas. I think that's part of the whole history and of this story that we're seeing here, and that is, again, it's regulation and enforcement. And I also think that there's technical advances that are helping. So let's not just give a pass to everybody and say everything is great and we just need more, development, more oil. And, I think we're doing a good job because we are being very responsible. All of us together are being very responsible.
And I will just say in response to that even though, just looking at that chart, even though there's not a perfect world out there, we're still making really dramatic progress over time. You can't help but be impressed by looking at that chart. So we're doing well. All right. Can we get a motion to adopt? Well, I think we have to adopt staff's recommendations. And it's okay. Ms. Hunt.
Director Sierra? Aye. Clark? Aye. Bennett? Aye. Lizalde?
Aye.
Mosby? Snyder?
Aye.
Patino?
Patino excused. She had to leave on a prior commitment.
Okay. Richardson? Wolf? Farr? Chair Adam?
Aye. It's unanimous. We love that. All right. We are adjourned until potentially December 15th in Santa Barbara, I believe.
The December meeting may be canceled.
It may be canceled, but I'm just saying it at the end of the meeting so that
Yes.
in the event that it goes on,
Sounds good.
we'll know. Thank you.